Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of A Little Jaded. I'm Joanna, joined as always by my awesome co-host, Kelly.
Hello.
Last month, I'm really excited because we touched on the topic of live events freelancing and, how to get your first gig, how do you even start with freelancing in the live event space. If you haven't checked that one out, be sure to do that. It was a really fun episode. But today, we're gonna still touch on the topic of freelancing, but we're gonna go into a different area, which I think a lot of people are interested in, is social media and marketing.
Yeah, so we brought on someone with tons of experience freelancing in social media management, marketing, and fan engagement. Lisa Rose Ryan.
Oh my God.
Lisa is a graduate of Pace University. She has experience working in managerial type roles with companies like Phantom Band and Mutuals Agency, and currently works with a roster of clients ranging from Gunnar to Victoria Justice, and alongside labels like Republic and Giant Music. So thanks so much for being with us, Lisa.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm like so pumped. You guys are crushing it as hosts. So I just can't wait to dive in and tell you guys a little bit more about what I do and hit me with all the questions. So yeah.
Yay, this is so exciting. I guess first of all, I think pretty much all of us kind of got into each other's circles probably from like fan to band, I would assume.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
like that whole like social sphere of like just music industry people, I'm pretty sure. So
Oh yeah.
that's how we kind of got introduced to you. So
Oh
for
yeah.
other people to get introduced to you, can you kind of touch on when you started working in the industry or when you even thought about wanting to work in it? Like,
It's so funny. I literally just made a random TikTok, which I think you saw, of like me
mhm,
being like, hey guys, like, don't be afraid to go into the music industry. Because
mhm,
I was like a little kid that didn't know what they were doing and just like jumped into it. And like Phantom Band, obviously, for I think all of us brought us into this like realm of, community and making everybody feel like welcomed and not like afraid and like breaking down that like wall that like you can't do it.
mhm,
Um, but I think for me, I was like 18, like going into college, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a nurse and I'm gonna like apply to like every nursing program that the East Coast has to offer. And my parents were like, yes, like you're gonna make money, like it's gonna be great. And
mhm,
then one day, sitting in my kitchen, I was like, yeah, no, I'm having a mental breakdown, like crying. No, I don't want to do that. I think it was like, am I gonna want to do that for the rest of my life? Like I'm gonna be 40 and like in a hospital room, and I just was like, that's great and so rewarding for so many people and helping everybody. And I was like, I would love to do that, but I just know that that's not gonna make me feel fulfilled
mhm,
personally. So I was like, what is so now what? What am I gonna do? Like I don't even know. I remember asking people, what do you do when you don't know what you want to do? And a lot of people said like communications was like the easiest, you know, cop out. Like go in and do something that you can kind of figure it out later. And then I ended up going to Pace, which was a great decision. It's a great school. And I just met so many people that were like, hey, like, music is an option and you can do it in so many different ways. And obviously I met Jamie from going to high school. I don't know if anybody, you guys know that. Like me and Jamie knew each other going into high school, and we were high school little pals. Um,
Wow.
yeah, for anybody that's
I had
listening,
no idea.
yeah, that doesn't know who Jamie is the founder of Phantom and Mutuals and like 8 other companies.
Right.
She's an icon. But yeah, we met in high school, which was like crazy. And then she reached back out to me when I went into college because she was in college. And I was obviously a huge fangirl. And she was like, how do you meet all these people? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know. Come with me one day. And then from there, she kind of was like, do you want to help me build this company? And I was like, me? I'm literally 18. Like, what am I gonna do that's gonna help build this company? She just brought me in, and at the time she had Caitlin and Maya on the team who are incredible as well. And they were just like kind of mentoring me and giving me little tasks of like, here, Lisa, like make this like random social media asset. And I was like, huh? Like, what do I do? I don't even know. And I think it was kind of just like figuring it out. And I still tell people, like, you just have to
Mhm.
try it, even if you don't know what you're doing. And even if you just say that sometimes you know what you're doing, it's okay. Like, you'll figure it out. And listen, that's not really great advice. You have to learn it, you have to educate yourself. But at the same time, like, don't be afraid to like take on a project that like you don't know what you're doing at first. Because me, it was all
Mhm.
throwing myself out there and kind of just being like, okay, figure it out. I have people around me that are gonna help me and guide me and teach me. So I think that was kind of like the main start of all of it. And then I ended up staying with Jamie for about 3 years, 4 years. I don't even
Oh,
know
wow.
the timeline anymore. Like it was 2019 up until 2023 last year was when I broke off and started doing my own stuff. But yeah, I was with Fanta Band, then I was with Fan Made, then I was with Mutuals, all of that stuff kind of was a big culmination of other things. And then I also did outside work, like I did freelance, like live events, like I would go like hang out at shows and help do VIP and do random things like here and there, just like get the experience. And then I don't know, social media kind of just landed in my lap, which I'm sure we can get into later. But that's kind of like the main start of all of it was that I dove in with like a clear mind. It was like, okay, I figure it out later. I mean, you never
Yeah.
know where you're gonna end up and who you're gonna meet along the way. So
Yeah. That's wild. So it was essentially like an accident. Like it just kind of
oh yeah,
happened.
absolutely. Like Jamie just texted me random one day, and I think you both know Dom.
Hmm.
Dom and I were just great friends from being like fans. Like obviously, I was a huge Shawn Mendes fan, and like Justin Bieber and Halsey, and like we just ended up like in the same rooms that we didn't even know we were in the same rooms together until me and Dom met. I think the first time was like outside Z100, like meeting Halsey, and he was like,
Yeah.
"I know you from Twitter," and I was like, "Oh yeah," and I was like petrified because I was like 17 and everybody's older than me. So I was always like there, just like, hey guys, trying to mind my own business. And then he like talked to me and I was like, oh my God, like Dom's a god. Like I don't even know how to react right now. And then Jamie was like, oh yeah, you know Dom. And I was like, you know Dom? Like, hello? And then we just all started working together and it was just
Mhm.
weird because like we all knew each other from being in like the fan realms, like Maya too, like Five Sauce fandom. Like everybody
Yeah.
just kind of came together and I was like, whoa, it's kind of crazy how everybody knows each other. And I didn't realize that like
Hmm.
5 years later from now, it'd still be the same way. Like I meet so many people that I'm like, wait, you know this person? And I know you, and this one knows Joanna, this one knows this person.
Hmm.
It's just so funny how everybody knows each other. It's crazy.
Yeah. We talk about
Yeah.
it all the time, how like the industry, it's crazy how like intertwined everything is. And you're just always meeting somebody or like seeing somebody on someone's story and you're like, oh my God, like I didn't even know. Like there's just so many paths that cross constantly.
I mean, I love it. I'm never shy when it comes to like being at a show and someone's like, I know you from this place. And I'm like, you do? That's crazy, but okay.
Yeah. I think it's cool to hear like how all of y'all started as fans too.
Oh
And you
yeah.
just all started as being a part of different communities, and that's how you knew each other. And then you all just kind of took that next step
Oh
and
yeah.
used that to your advantage because we're all fangirls here. I love to see it. I think it's so cool to hear that.
It's the best feeling in the world. Like I love being a fan and then I get now it's like so rewarding even more so and I can't even imagine what like 5 years from now is gonna look like. What rooms we'll all be in and shock ourselves that like,
Yeah.
whoa, how did I end up here? Like sometimes I'm just at shows and I'm like, what? Like, I don't, how did hello? Like 5 years ago, I was like crying in my room, filming myself, listening to like the new Five Sauce album. And now it's like, oh, here I
Mhm.
am. Like, it's so scary. And even my mom, like, everybody that knows me knows that my mom, like, comes to like all the shows with me. And like, she's just as much as a fangirl as like I am. But it's like,
Yeah.
because she gets to watch like all of, like, not just me, but like my friends and like all the people that I work with, like, also get to like do all of this cool stuff. And it's just like, so rewarding, I think, for all of us to just be like on the other side of the curtain per se.
Yeah. I love that. I love your relationship with your mom. It's so cute.
I'm like, Mom, you're like a celebrity. Like, what's going on? I need to hide you now.
Yeah, I mean, I bring my mom to most shows anyway because
Yeah.
she's crazy. She loves to have attention and wanting to make sure I'm alive. Um so I really feel that. It's also so cool hearing about like how you transitioned from I mean just like me knowing Jamie and Dom and then going into all these different like companies. I was thinking because I think I met you also through Fanta Band,
Yeah.
very briefly. We never necessarily had like a one-on-one
I feel
conversation.
yeah, no, we didn't, but I feel like I've spoken to you like so much times in passing.
Yeah, I was
On
like
like,
I've
the
definitely
month.
been in like those like mutuals
Yeah, like the focus groups and stuff
focus groups, yeah. And I think that's where I saw you the most.
where I just
Uh,
yap at everyone. I'm just like, Bob.
yeah. But yeah, it's so lovely like to hear your story of like going through that, especially like going from uh nursing to that because I feel like a lot of people
Mhm.
also like Joanna and I both were not studying music at all at first.
What were you
And
guys studying? Tell me both. I want to
I was
know.
gonna be a teacher, like early childhood education. That's what I
Oh
transferred
my
to
God,
university with. And
that's
I was like, I had never worked with kids at that point. I was like, I wanna, talk to people and be creative. And so I was like, I guess I'll be a teacher. And
makes sense. Yeah,
yeah.
that's so funny. What about you, Kelly?
I'm currently actually studying psychology.
Okay.
Um I'm taking two routes and we'll see where I go because I'm like, oh, I gotta go get my master's and PhD, but also I want to do music. So,
So you
um,
can't be a brainiac and a fangirl. Like it's
you're so right. You're
hard.
so right.
I
Right.
love that. That's iconic.
I feel like
Um,
psychology in a weird way kind of can work though,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah, yeah,
studying
yeah.
people, and that's basically what like marketing is. It's like people.
Absolutely. I just started my master's for like music business, and there's so many classes that are about like the mental health side of it and also like
Mhm.
analyzing different like thought behaviors like in music. So there you go. Maybe
Yeah,
you
no,
end
for sure.
up
Yeah.
that on that line.
What was, because I saw, by the way, congratulations that you're doing a master's. That's so cool. What was like the thought process of doing that while you're also
Yeah.
taking on clients and working?
I mean, everybody I think also doesn't even know that like when I was in college, I worked full time and also did full time school. So like I kind of just was like, okay, love you pace, but I'm gonna do everything remote. And they were like, they hated me for that because I was like the one girl that was like, hey, professor, like I'm actually gonna do all of the classes remote and so that I could work at the same time. And then I think for me it was just like if I can get my master's and be done in the next like year and a half, I
Hmm.
mean, why not? You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
Berkeley, I was lucky enough that they offer just like a online, completely asynchronous program that you could just kind of do the work on your own terms and get everything done as long as it's in by this due date and you submit it and it's all, acknowledged. That's all you got to do. And I mean, it's a great program. I highly recommend it for anybody that's looking to like get their degree and like learn more and also just like connect with like the top of the top people that are working in the industry. I mean,
Yeah.
Berkeley, I underestimated it at first because I was between like NYU, Berkeley, and like USC in California. And it was just
Yeah.
like Berkeley makes the most sense. I mean, if you look at the track record of like artists and producers and
Hmm.
managers that have gone to that school, the amount of connections that you can make is like wild. So I do highly recommend, and I am very lucky to be able to do it in general because I know there are people out there that can't. But I recommend looking into as many resources as you can because they're out there and programs that'll help you financially or getting into what you want to do as a whole. They offer so much outside of just business in general. So not me plugging Berkeley, like they better sponsor me at this point.
Right.
Very, very simple application process too. People are like always so intimidated, I think, by like me. I was like so scared to apply to grad school. I was like, oh my God, like this is gonna be like this huge application, like a million essays, whatever.
Hmm.
Berkeley was like, it was just so smooth. They just one essay, you're like, they look at your track record, your transcript, whatever you have. And it was like very simple. And I was like, oh, this is great. Sign me up, please.
I just want to shift the conversation just a little bit to get back on track.
I know, it's like
Um,
brand.
but okay, so yes, so you went from like a bunch of different companies and things like that, but now you're a freelancer. So how did you begin as a freelancer?
I think for me, like I said earlier, it kind of just like fell into my lap. I mean, when I left my old position, I was looking to like go into an agency or like UTA or like WME
Hmm.
and be an agent. And I was like, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to be at live shows and like be on the ground, like go on tour, which I still want to do. Or like my end goal is definitely like artist management or something of the sort where I'm like, helping out artists and growing their like careers. But freelancing kind of fell into my lap. I mean, I always knew that like I was pretty good at social media and like I understood it, and that I started doing a little bit more research about, what the metrics look like and how to really understand like strategy, because I said, okay, maybe I can kind of do this in the interim period of like finding something that I really want to do in long term while also like I'm going back to school. So what can I do to maybe fill that gap in the meantime? And freelance seemed like a good option. And right after I had left, I reached out to Victoria and her team, and we were talking, and they were like, okay, we'd love to have you back. And kind of dive back into like what I was doing while we were at the old company. And she was just like, I would love to have you. Like, this would be a great, we work really well together. And it was just like, bread and butter, and so easy to just like dive right back into that and go into the flow of, editing content and just figuring out what I think it also just it comes from like when you work with an artist, you kind of realize how well you may gel together. And I think for somebody like Victoria, we just end up really knowing how to bounce off ideas with each other and figuring out like what her voice is. And I think I understood
Mhm.
that for her. So that was just an easy, like, all right, let's do it. Like, why not? And it just felt, it came so naturally. And then from there, it kind of just spewed into, a friend of mine works at Giant Music, and she was like, hey, do you want to work on these few artists and just one-on-one projects, come shoot this content for this show? And I was like, I don't know how to shoot content for a show. Like, what are you talking about? I was like, I just shoot iPhone content. She was like, well, yeah, you can do that. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that was an option to like just shoot on my iPhone. Like, and I know when I was at Mutuals, like that was always something that people were like, how do you film like such good videos on your iPhone? I was like, I don't know. I didn't think that that was like a skill. It was just
Mhm.
that I think I was doing at shows myself. Like I would go to five-star shows and I'd be like, here's my video and post it on TikTok. And people were like, that looks really good. And I was like, damn, maybe I could do something with this. So people
Right.
started asking me to come film shows and just get iPhone content or film short form content for certain artists. And I was like, oh, this is pretty fun. Like I like doing this. And that's kind of just how I started building a roster. It was just, one person here would reach out and be like, do you want to do this? And then they become a retainer client or whatever it may be. And now, since then, I've just been, taking on, I think, the projects that make the most sense for me. I think a
Mhm.
lot of times people think, like, as a freelancer, it is hard to like turn down certain things because you're like, oh my God, I would love to do this. And like, of course, the main goal is to also like monetarily wise, like build your roster and also have a constant form of income, because
Mhm.
freelancing isn't like you're on a salary and you have to support yourself. So that's a huge part of it, as well as like,
Yeah.
figuring out what projects make the most sense to support yourself, and also ones that you're passionate about. Because I've taken on projects before where I'm like, you know what, this was really exciting for me, but it doesn't really gel. And I don't want to be at a disservice, not only to myself, but to the client, and if there's somebody out there that may be doing something better or somebody that they may work better with, I'd rather, pass them along to somebody that I know would be more of a service to them. So I kind of just spewed off into like a million different directions, but that's like the gist of how it started. It just really fell into my lap, and I fell in love with it. And there's so much more outside of just social media that I've ended up doing. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think it's also cool how you touched upon how you didn't realize how important just being able to get a good video at a show is, because
Yeah.
that's like the most basic, like most people, if you're, or at least most of us in like the fangirl space, like you're going to a show and you want to get the best video ever. And then you see these videos on TikTok and you see people at shows who work for these artists who are just up literally recording on their phone or with a steady cam, and you're like, I think I
Yep.
could do that. And you were able to utilize that skill that you didn't even know
Oh
was
yeah.
important.
The first time I ever did it was last year. We were at Fletcher's Pride show in Asbury Park, and
Mhm.
Olivia O'Brien was like, can you just shoot iPhone videos on my phone? And I was like, I'm in the photo pit with these people that have like DSLR, like giant cameras, and there's me
Right.
with like my little iPhone. I'm like getting all the angles, and I was like, this feels
Hmm.
so wrong, but at the same time, that's it's it's so valuable at the same time, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That also like brings up the point that like you can do a lot with what you have, even if
absolutely.
because a lot of the times we feel like we're stuck, we don't have enough, or we don't have the right tools or anything. But you
Yeah.
can make a lot with what you have.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially when you doubt like imposter syndrome and we talk about it all the time, and it's like how much of like, okay, oh wow, like this person is doing it so much better than me, or like how is mine gonna look as good as that, or whatever it may be. But it's
Mhm.
also like there's so many things out there that people need, and I don't think that there's ever gonna be there's always gonna be somebody that can fill that, and like you don't
Yeah.
realize that, oh, what I'm doing will be of a service to somebody. It's just a matter of finding those people and finding the right place to just, provide that. And I think a lot of people doubt themselves and saying, like, what am I going to ever be able to do for somebody? But at the same time, there's so many people out there that need that one person.
Also, I needed to give you a quick little shout out that I didn't even know that you were working with Victoria Justice for a while, but I was like, "Oh
I
my God,
kept it
she's
really
like
low key.
everywhere." Like she was like like more on my pages, and it was definitely the least effect of her social media.
And I kept it very low key for a long time for a multitude of reasons. Like it was just more so like, I wanted to make sure that like the content would do well before I'm like, hey guys, I do this work. And it's
Right,
like,
right.
so exactly what you said, but thank you. I mean, we're trying our best out here. I think the main goal for her is that she is an independent artist, for those of you that don't know. I mean, you would think Victoria Justice is at this like major label or like distribution company, and like it's fully just her doing her thing, and that's her vibe. Like she just wants to do everything independently and make it all her own and make people love what she's doing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And we were gonna ask this question later on, but I guess now it kind of makes sense. Where you said like artists like her, obviously every artist is different. Artists like her, she's independent, so she's the boss. You're pretty much just working through her. But when it comes to working with someone who's independent and then working alongside artists who are at a label,
Mhm.
what's that kind of dynamic difference like?
The difference is like is mostly just like the team that you're working with, right? So with somebody like Victoria, it's very much still like one-on-one, like we just get on our weekly calls and talk through what we're gonna, do for the coming weeks. And with somebody, let's say like Gunner, like we get on a weekly call, but it's like our entire team is there. We're talking about different strategies, a lot more collaborative, which I honestly love. I love collaborating with other people. It's honestly helps me a lot personally, like workflow wise, like bouncing off ideas with other people and like seeing thoughts and just seeing where we can improve, or getting everybody else's
Mhm.
opinion is extremely helpful for me.
Yeah.
When it comes to working with other labels like Giant per se, like if I'm working with a client one-on-one, it's mostly just like, hey, like here's the people that are your point of contact, that's who you're going to communicate with. And that's mainly like you sometimes you won't even communicate with the artist. It's mainly just like, here's the manager, here's the director, whoever is going to be on set or whoever's going to be at the show that you're like communicating with. It really just depends and varies like on who I'm working with and what's going on that day. Like I did a signing
Yeah.
with an artist named Empress of, and like I went there and it was fully just her and like her one point person, and we were just all like running around getting all the content, and it was just a really fun and different dynamic than like being on set with like a team of like 25 people where you're like just a little person and you're like, here I am getting my iPhone content, and like I don't even talk to the artist and I'm just here. And
Yeah.
it's very different. But I love all of it. I think it's like good to have like a nice mix of, you're one
Yeah.
day you're doing one thing and the next day you're like on a completely different side of the spectrum of whatever you're doing. So it's still
Yeah.
done.
I think it also kind of tests how adaptable you are
Oh
because
yeah.
you're not just always in this comfortable space. You're always being thrown in like, okay, like you said, one of 25 is so different than just one of one when you're just working with yourself.
Yeah. It's so funny that like you say that because I used to be like the opposite. Like I would be like, oh my God, like I could never go into this room and like just appear. Like, what am I gonna do? And then it took me like a long time to like get comfortable with like adapting to different things, and like going to things by myself. Like a random example, and so off top, but like I went and one of my friends like tore her ACL. So she was like, can you cover for me? Like I need to do this thing. I had never met anybody that was there. And I didn't find out to the day of that it was for like a Fletcher listening event. And I was like, oh, what? Like, how much? Hello? And I just got thrown into the ring with like Fletcher and her whole team. And I was like, okay, like, I've been here before, I could do it again. And it was just like
Mhm.
trusting yourself of like, all right, you're capable of doing this. You can adapt, you can go in and keep your head up and you know what you're doing. So don't let anybody like, step on your toes in a sense. So I think
Mhm.
it's always like a reminder of like, don't, don't be intimidated if you're like going into a room with these people that, to somebody like us, it's like crazy. But at the end of the day, you have to like, put your best foot forward and act like, I got this and you guys should be glad that I'm here in a sense. Sometimes it could sound cocky, but it's not. You have to just be like, they know that I'm here
Confident.
for a reason, and like I wouldn't be here if I wasn't capable of what I'm doing, you know?
Right. And I think that's something that a lot of people that skill, like being able to be adaptable and flexible to different environments, I think is
Abs-
something that people might not understand. Like that's what employers want to see, that you're able
Absolutely.
to be thrown in anywhere and succeed, or at least like the fake it till you make it. Like sometimes it's
Oh,
true
I
though.
was gonna bring that up, and I was like, should I even say that? Like, fake it till you make it is like such a huge concept. And I think a lot of employers, like you just said, like don't want to admit that that's sometimes what they're looking for is that somebody that can
Mhm.
like, all right, maybe you're saying that you can do this, but when you come into the job, let's see how you actually are able to adapt and see if
Yeah.
you can really, I've had so many interviews where they're like, can you do this? I'm just like, yeah, I can, I'll figure it out. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not,
You're not gonna say no.
oh no, like crazy stuff. I've said like yes to, and I'm like,
And
okay,
we're
I've,
not encouraging you to lie.
no,
We're encouraging
absolutely
you
don't
to just
lie.
figure it out, do your
Yes,
research if you don't know like enough about it, like,
right.
educate yourself so that when you're thrown into the position, you're more like, okay, let's
Oh,
see how this goes. And I think most people like so like you go into this room and like you think you're the only person who's like ever done this like for the first time. Everybody's been in a situation where like you're doing something for the first time.
yeah. Oh, that's a great point. Like, there's so many times where it's like, I remember one time I was asked to like do a lyric video, like make a lyric video, and I was like, oh, what? I was like, yeah, sure, I can do that. And then I just watched like 15 videos, stayed up till 3 a.m. and I was like, yeah, I can do that. And then I did.
Right.
I was like, oh, like, see, I just like learned, taught myself, got to the point where, I felt like I was confident enough to be able to actually do it. And it was like, it's not, it's not as hard as you may think it is. Even if something is so intimidating, it's like, if you really want to do that and it's something that you want, your body will tell you that you are able to get to that point. It's a
Yeah.
crazy thing when you're so passionate about something, how your body will react and just be like, turn on and like do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like fight or flight.
absolutely. I'm like, sometimes I'm like, wait, I can't do that. And then I'm like thinking about all the things that I want to do and how excited I am. And I'm like, wait, all right, check yourself, like
Yeah.
dial back in, you know?
Going off of that, um, you do mention a lot of different skills that you'd have to acquire, but also some that you also developed and harnessed for your role. So what skills should someone who wants to work in marketing or social media focus on in order to succeed in these fields? And also, like, what has helped you succeed in these positions?
That's a good question. When you guys said that to me, I was like, oh God, what am I feel like there's so many skills that are like, top level, like regular, like, when you're doing social media, it's like you gotta understand all the strategies and what you're putting into it and how to be, come across as like an artist. What does that look like for that person? But I think a lot of times it's like overlooked of like consistency is such a huge thing. And to be consistent, not only in like the stuff that you're doing with your client, but like in the work that you do yourself is a huge part of it. And like having a routine and like really knowing how to like remind yourself, especially when you're a freelancer, there's nobody there that's going to tell you what to do, when to do it, when it's due, how to do it. So you're really essentially your own boss, obviously. And it's just a matter of really being diligent and, you know, on yourself and having those reminders for yourself that like, all right, here's every week what I'm going to do. Here's what I know that I have to get done and, who I have to talk to, whatever it may be. And I think a lot of times a big skill point is also being communicative because there's so many teams out there that aren't. And it's a matter of navigating, how to talk to different people, how to, project yourself onto different teams and how to portray what you're capable of as well. Like I mentioned earlier, like even if you don't know how to do something, like how are you going to set yourself up for success in like these larger conversations, especially when like you're trying to get a new client. Like so many people have asked me, like, how do I even reach out to people? And it's just really about being communicative and don't be afraid to just be like, hello, here is what I do. And please respond. Like it's not to, you don't
Yeah.
want to sound desperate, but at the same time, it's a matter of, being confident that you can just go out there and communicate with people. And if they come back, what's your response? What are you going to, say back in a way that's going to be, really draw them in and get them wanting to work with you? And it's a matter of being authentic to the work that you do. Because a lot of times I'll be like, all right, this is what I do, but I can also give you XYZ on top of that. And it's, understanding different ways that you can kind of communicate with people, I think is a huge skill that like a lot of people aren't aware is even a skill. Like you just have to be able to adapt to different teams and talk to different artists and, expand beyond what you're comfortable with. I mean, I've worked with people that
Mhm.
are like, I don't even know, speak a lick of Spanish. And I work with like Hispanic artists. And I'm like, what? I didn't even, it's just a matter of learning how to communicate with people, even if you're not at
Mhm.
that caliber of like, we're on the same page. So those are two big ones. And then I think what has helped me succeed, I think it is that, like staying on top of yourself, like reminding yourself why you're doing it is such a huge thing. Like, why am I even doing this? Like, hello, I could be doing anything else. How am I gonna continue to do what I'm doing at the best that I can? And it's just a matter of, every week is another week. And if you got through last week, you can get through this week. And don't worry, there's always areas of improvement. And I think for me, it's also like evaluating myself. What did I do last week that I can kind of do better this week? Or, I may have made 15 mistakes last week. Let's try to only make 5 this week. Like it's okay to like make mistakes. I think the biggest part of social media is that it's probably the industry that you make the most mistakes in.
Right.
I will say, like, it's like, what copy was wrong, what text did I like miss putting on this video. It's also like checking yourself, like double checking, making sure that like every
Mhm.
week I'm like, all right, last week I just like didn't spend enough time on this one thing. Like I need to do better in this area. So that was a huge part of like staying successful and like keeping up with like my own, you know, workload is don't overwhelm
Mhm.
yourself. I think for me, it was hard to decide what that workflow looked like because I was so eager and wanted to take on every single thing that came my way. And I mentioned that earlier that like I had to turn down certain things that I was like so excited to do. And then I was like, I can't do these things. I will be at a disservice and I don't want to do that. So just measuring the amount that you can actually be capable of handling on your own. And, I think I'm at this point where it's like, all right, I have to reevaluate, maybe I need a little team member to help me or like somebody that can like come on and like, work alongside me and just be a helper in a sense because there is a lot that goes into doing social media that I don't think a lot of people realize. So it's just a matter of keeping yourself in check, I think is a huge part of like success is like reminding yourself of like, here's what you got to do, here's what you can do better. And don't be afraid to like yell at yourself sometimes, but also being confident. I don't know. It's kind of contradictive, but
You said that there's a lot also that goes into social media that a lot of people don't necessarily know about. Would you able to expand on that?
oh yeah. Oh, I could expand on it for days. Not just Oh, I think like on LinkedIn, I really both probably agree. It's like I see these posts and it's like every social media manager's nightmare. And it's like these like funny posts, but they're so accurate. I think a lot of times, I think one of the questions you guys, I'm sure you're gonna ask me, but I know, and I was excited to answer is like the little jaded part. And I feel
Mhm.
like this goes into that a little bit of like when you hire a social media manager, what does that look like? And I think some people think it's not just logging into a page and posting. It's not just planning out posts. There's so much that goes into like strategizing, understanding the data, like what times are like optimal to post. Where are we posting at what time? Like
Mhm.
TikTok and Instagram hate each other. Like you cannot post the same video on TikTok that you're posting on Instagram sometimes. Like
Yeah.
there's so much that I think also like artists, it can be frustrating because they don't obviously understand what is going on. So it's my job to explain to them, like, this is how we're doing it. I want to post this, Lisa Rose. No, we can't post that right now. Like, it's not, it's not just like, here's your posts and like it going live today. It's a lot of like going into the different like emotional parts of it too, like how much artists want to be in so much control and like you don't want to take that away from them. But at the same time, it's also like my job is to help you and to guide you and to build your profile and build your audience. So you also have to listen to me and what I'm telling you to do, but in a nice way. I'm like, here's, what we're gonna walk through the baby steps. But there's also so much of like, can you edit this content? Can you also, come up with 15 content ideas? Can you make up all the captions? Can you make up all the hooks? All the, literally everything. It's like compiling trends, like it's so much more than just that. Like I mentioned before, people have asked me to do lyric videos. Like, can you make a Spotify canvas? Can you do my Spotify the canvas, all this stuff like that goes into it that people are like, that's not social media, but it is. There's just so many different avenues of like, can you make my link tree? Can you edit my Comey? Like, can you make this branding look better? Like, it's not just, getting on and posting. It's also like figuring out, I have to syndicate to your Snapchat and then come up with like your verbiage that you would talk in your everyday voice. So it's also understanding
Yeah.
like how these artists are like talking in their everyday that makes it seem natural. Because a lot of people I know that a lot of people out there know that like you look at Selena Gomez's Instagram, it's not Selena Gomez, sometimes it's like, you know, Annie who's running her social media, but it has to sound like Selena Gomez. So I think a lot of people don't realize that it's understanding the different parts that anything can get thrown at you. I mean, people think that social media manager also means content creator and like going and doing those like content capturings, like I said, where people are like, you can do short form content too, right? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, why not? It's a lot of different things. I've done press, I've done like press clippings, making EPKs, like writing up bios, like insane other mailing lists. It's just everything, you know what I mean? And it just depends on the client too. Some people have asked me to do the bare minimum, like post my YouTube shorts, and I'm like, sure, why not? I mean, it still falls under the umbrella. It's just there is like a lot, and people underestimate that like there's so much that is behind the curtain of just posting an Instagram post or like an Instagram story. Now there's broadcast channels, there's threads, there's like 15 million different things that you have to like
Mhm.
think about and what makes the most sense for each artist because it's all different. So that was
Mhm.
the long answer.
No, I think that's so interesting too for anybody who's listening and they want to get into it, but they're not sure if they're ready to get into it. They just don't know like everything that goes into it. I feel like a lot of people don't know until you've done it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's also like my biggest thing is also not giving people a warning, but like knowing that when you go into social media, people are going to ask you to do things that like you're like that. I'm not getting paid enough to do this, number one. Sometimes it's like the main thing too. It's like I'm not getting, compensated enough for the amount of work that I'm doing. So I think also it's a big factor of, like I said before, like communicating and knowing how to really sell yourself and really know what your work is valued at because I still struggle with that every day. It's like, I can do XYZ for you and I know that I can do it well. It's just putting that self into the value of like, how you work and going into this industry and like being your own boss is like it's terrifying, but like you have to really have a certain mindset to like really let go of that structural concept of being at a corporate company or like being even as a small startup, like even though Mutuals was not a corporate company, we had a lot of structure and like ways that we worked, and that when you're on your own, you don't have any of that. It's completely the bare bones of like you figuring it out and you learning how to do everything yourself, you know?
Yeah.
Going off of that, because I know that you do a lot of different projects and you've also just elaborated on the millions of things that you actually do, but how do you know your limits or how do you set yourself some boundaries?
Oh yeah. I mean, everybody, and we all know that like music industry is like not a 9 to 5. It's a 24/7. You're on the clock every day. And I'm still learning how to like navigate that, especially when you're in the freelance world and it's kind of like you do kind of have your own there isn't a day where I'm like, you know, that's the same. Sometimes I'm at my desk at my table all day, and sometimes I can be like out and about doing things, and like I just have to, be on the phone and really just communicate with people or just have phone calls on the go. So it is about like setting aside the time for yourself that's like, hey guys, like social media is constant. Like it's like being a manager. You have to post on the weekends, you have to post at midnight during release. I may be across the country, but if somebody's over in Australia and I need to post for them, like I may have to be up for that. And it's like preparing yourself for like the different sides of where you're working. So also thinking about that when you take on different projects. Like I had somebody that was in like New Zealand and I was like, I'm not gonna be up at like 4 a.m. and like I have to like really set myself straight and be like, yeah, this is a great opportunity, but I'm not the right person for this. And like I will be selling myself short if I take on this, project. So it's also about really taking the time to be like, hey guys, I'm going away for the weekend. Here's how I set it up for you so that you don't have to worry about when I'm not here. You have a question, just let me know. And it's been like a difficult kind of navigating how to like word that over time and like figure out, how to communicate with the right people to make sure that my point comes across in like a way that is respectful too. Because, they also know that I'm not at a company and I don't have anybody telling me when I can take off. So I'm just like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going away and there's nothing that I can do. It's just a matter of here's the plan and here's what I've set up and you let me know if you have any questions. And that's kind of just how I've been navigating it. And it really just depends on like what the day looks like because every day is like there's something new and there's something going on and everything is changing. I mean, I've been across the world and like, hello, where am I posting today? Like it
Yeah.
is a lot of like figuring it out on the fly and not really always having a set routine. And that's okay. You just gotta go with the flow sometimes. And especially in the summer, like everybody's like, oh, like I want to go to the beach. And like I want to do this and I want to do that. And it's like sometimes you just gotta really buckle down and like figure out what you're doing first before you can have fun. And I think a lot of people
Yeah.
underestimate that part of it is that you don't just get like a normal day off where you could just put your phone away. It's constant. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even with what like us at Jaded when we're planning stuff, me and Kelly are constantly talking at all hours of the day, and I feel bad because we got that time change too. And I'm
Oh
like,
my
I know
God.
it's like 11 for you right now, but I need to talk to you about this, this, and this. Like, that's just how it is
Oh,
too.
absolutely. Like one of my clients is in like a different, like is in Greece right now. And it's like 4 a.m. I'm getting a text and I'm like, great. Yeah, sure. I'll respond
Like,
at like
right.
9 a.m. though. Like I'm not like I'm up because I'm crazy, but like I'm not responding. Like that's also like a boundary. Like sometimes you just have to learn to be like, all right, it's past the time. If it's not a pressing thing that's like has
Yeah.
to be done right this second, I'm not. Like that's another boundary. It's like if it's not something that is life or death or like detrimental to like the campaign or like the socials or whatever it is, it's gonna be set aside for now because like my mental health deserves that and I'm not gonna look
Yeah.
at this as I am, so it's a
Yeah.
huge part.
No, definitely. And I mean, kind of on the topic of mental health, we're going to get into the last question. You kind of already touched on it. But before that, I wanted to know, do you have like a favorite project or a campaign or just like anything that you've worked on so far that stands out as your favorite?
I would say right now, we worked on a project with Victoria that was like for the last song she did Raw. And for a while, it was kind of figuring out what her sound is, like, what are we gonna give the world? Because everybody knows her as, Nickelodeon child star, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the media. And of course, all of that was just coming at the worst time possible. And it was just, how do we make this release kind of like shine and like make people actually care about the song? And it is like a song that's like very centered around like loving yourself and like mental health and like really making sure somebody loves you for all of you. So for me, it was just a fun project of like coming up with the content, like how can we film it? What is like the messaging that's going to come across here? And like it was a really rewarding cycle. Like we just had so many videos that like did really well and like were really well received. And she did like a collab with like Daniela Monet, which was obviously like Trina on the show. And like that was like an idea that came from me and it was a rewarding like moment of like, oh wow, like my idea actually came to life and I got to like see that all come into fruition. I got to film it. I got to like be a part of the whole creative process. And it was something that solely came from like me and Victoria. So that was just something that's always like when it's like a rewarding project and like you really get to see your work like get turned around and like the song is now at like almost at 1 million streams on Spotify and like knowing that a lot of that came from the traction that we built across everything is just awesome and like so fun to just see like how excited she gets when it's like, whoa, like people love this video or people love like this lyric like song thing that we did on TikTok or whatever it is. And that's just so fun. And like that project was like so many different concepts came from it, like raw food, like raw this. Like we were like spewing
Mhm.
ideas back and forth. And it was just a really fun, like overall, like well-rounded project that was like I really got to take the reins for the first time and like have a big, big part in it. So that was really fun. And I think that's definitely been my favorite right now, you know?
Yeah. Oh my God. That is so awesome. First of all, congratulations. That is so exciting. Almost 1 million
Oh,
streams.
yes. Oh my God. Getting a million,
I
like, people don't think it's hard. People are like, oh, 1 million streams. I'm like, this isn't, no,
that,
we need to do a lot of work and to get it there, you know?
yeah, definitely. And I watched that video and I also loved it. So giving you your flowers there.
Like, I love that video. It's so funny too. Like, 'cause people
Yeah.
were like, oh, it's such a simple thing, but like getting to that video to be in like slow motion and like the timing and like all that stuff, you have to think about all of that before you film it. And it was
Yeah.
like, that was not the first take, let me tell you. It was like the 50th. So at least we got it. We
Yeah.
got the shot.
No, I loved it. I think that's so cool. And I hope, people listening are inspired by that too, because I'm sure you never thought you would be working with somebody like Victoria.
Oh no. You think I went to California? I was like, is this real? Like, what is going on? And I think a lot of times it's also like we're so eclectic to the fangirl experience, and it's like, how do you like shut that off, when you're in like an environment like that? And I think it's also like realizing that like a lot of people are just like us, and like artists are very much human beings, and that they understand and they have emotions and they have feelings and they appreciate and value a lot of different things, just like we do.
Mhm.
So especially working with like somebody of that caliber and any of the clients that I work with, no matter how big or small they are, it's that everybody is human and it really is like rewarding no matter how big it is. It's just nice to be acknowledged as well for the work that you do because I've worked with people in the past and it's like as much as I love working with them, it's like where is the ounce of credit for the stuff that I've done, and that's part of the Jaded answer as well, is that, you just gotta understand that sometimes you're not always going to be, acknowledged, and that's okay. But you will find the people out there that are going to acknowledge your work and what you've done and thank you for it. So if you're not getting that, you will get it, and don't be discouraged by it,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I guess let's officially ask the question
Yeah,
because
I keep mentioning it, like,
it's
never stop.
our signature little question that we like to throw in at the end of every podcast. But in your experience in the music industry so far, have you ever gotten a little jaded? And if so, how do you come back to yourself and the work that you love?
I mean, like I said, there's like so many different parts that I can mention, but like
Mhm.
it's definitely hard when like there's parts of things that you've contributed to and like you don't get credited for, or your work is not being valued at the caliber that you would want it to be, or whatever it may be. And it can be very discouraging where it's like, oh, like I did all of this work and it's like, damn, like I'm not gonna get my little sliver of like a thank you or credit or whatever it is. And I don't think that that's an easy thing to like come back from, especially when you're like the beginning stages of your career. And it's like, I know there's so many people that are interns and like, especially when you're in that position, like, how do you feel valued? So it's a matter of like knowing that you are worth what you're putting in, like reminding yourself. Also, like, there's so many people out there that like don't work in music that I've had people tell me, wow, you're doing a great job. And like that alone is like so nice to hear of like, wow, somebody that doesn't even have any idea, any clue what goes into the music industry to
Right.
acknowledge the work that you're doing is a really nice thing. And it's really fun to like my boyfriend is a lawyer and he's like, or he's gonna be a lawyer and he's like, wow, that's so cool. Like I didn't even know that that was like a thing. And I'm like, oh, that made me feel good because like he has no idea what's going on. So
Right.
there's also that part of it. And I think another huge thing is like what I mentioned earlier is like people not knowing how to navigate bringing you onto a team, right? Of like, how do you work alongside people that, can you do XYZ? Like, oh, we need this, blah, 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 blah. And like, they don't know how to communicate. And it's like, listen, and I credit myself a lot in the sense that I feel like I'm a very easygoing, like, I will not take anything too much to heart or like get offended or like hold a grudge or whatever it may be. So I'm very open-minded and like combative in the sense where I will communicate more than I even need to just to make sure that like we're all on the same page. So for me, like I'll get like, all right, like it's okay. Like don't be so like hard on yourself when somebody tells you like, oh my God, like you didn't do this right. And like they don't know how to communicate that to you in like a normal sense. And I'm like, all right, take 10 steps back. How am I going to respond to this? Like, I
Yeah.
know that I can respond in a way that's either going to be positive or negative. And I always tend to choose the positive side, of course, because like I just would rather be the bigger and the better person at the end of the day and understand that like there's so many people in the industry that you're going to meet that are going to have a different outlook, especially we talk about being women in the music industry and how that
Mhm.
is a huge part of it and how you will be perceived and how you'll be spoken to. And that's, yeah, I don't need to say much more because I know everybody's going to get it when I say it.
Mhm.
So that's a huge, huge part of it. And that stems from like the main point that I was just making of like communicating, standing up for yourself, really knowing how to present yourself in a room and, be confident when you walk in there that you have what it takes to do what you're doing. And I'm being a
Yeah.
motivational speaker right now, but it's true. So I think that's a huge part of it is digging yourself back up and knowing that like I know what I'm doing. Don't be so hard on yourself. And like I am so hard on myself every day. I'm the biggest hypocrite. But tomorrow's a new day, and whatever you didn't do today, you can always do tomorrow. So don't worry about it. Don't harp on it.
Yeah.
Harp on it so much. You
Yeah.
know?
You're quite the motivational speaker,
I
honestly.
don't even know where I get this stuff from. I'm like, am I just pulling this out of my hello? But it
No,
makes sense. I'm just like, okay. I just want everybody to I think a big thing for me is like I just want everybody to know that like you also are in each other's corner. Like people are like, oh, I was so afraid to like talk to you. What are you talking about? Like, do you see my Instagram? Like I'm like a psycho sometimes. Like, please just DM me or talk to me. Like I'm not like a scary person.
it's like what you said before about like reaching out to like clients that you want to work with. Like there is this sense of like this like intimidation, you know? And it's
I have
like
some
the
crazy
second you do it, the more you're like, "Oh, it wasn't scary at all."
No, I have sent the craziest cold emails. Like I'm like, hello, Halsey. Like when I was like 18. Like, and sometimes like I'll tell a funny story. I actually don't know if I'm allowed to tell this story, but I will. I remember when we first started mutuals, I was like so dead set on working with Max Schneider.
Oh, love.
I was like, we know Max. Like me and Dom have gone to Max shows like all the time. Dom has worked on his merch multiple times, and I was like, can we just like reach out? Like, how hard is that? And I remember like we sent the email. It was like a really nice thing to just like have a meeting and like do all that stuff. And that was like the first time that I was like, oh wow, like we could just reach out and like it's not that hard or like not that scary. And it's either gonna get a yes or a no, right? So I'd rather reach out and get a no than like never reach out and be like in the wonderance of like, oh, what if I did send that email? Like what would have happened? And same thing happened like at Pace. I wanted to sign this band Juice to come play a show. And I was like, yeah, okay, like I'm never gonna get an email back. And at that time I had never done anything. So I was like, let me just do it. And then I got an email back from their UTA, an agent. I was like, holy crap, like this is crazy. At the time I was like, why did I send that email? Like I sound so silly, but it ended up working out in my favor. So those
Mhm.
are the two examples I'll give of like, don't be afraid to like send those emails because like sometimes it'll just work out in your favor. And what's the worst thing that can happen? You're gonna get a no, big whoop, on to the next, you know?
Right. Even in the aspect of like you were saying like people like reaching out to you, like you see somebody with a job that you're like, "Oh, that looks like my dream job or what I want to do." Like the amount of
Mm.
times even just recently that like I followed somebody and then they follow me back and I'm like, "Oh." And then you know,
Oh my
you
God.
get to talk to them that way and, you know, hop on a call that way. Like it's really that and then the way that like we were saying, like the world is so small.
Oh my
Like
God.
if you're
No,
trying to
no,
get into
no,
this
no.
industry, you probably know somebody who knows this person.
Oh my God, the amount of degrees of separation I have to people that I want to work with, I'm like, oh, like, how do I just, it's just a matter of like wiggling around and seeing how you're gonna do it. And like I said, it's just everybody is always in each other's corner. I feel like whether you think they are or not, like there are so many people out there that I was like, oh, I don't know if this person even knows who I am. And then they're like, oh my God, like I love what you're doing, or they're so supportive and like they want to like connect with you and just
Mhm.
shoot that LinkedIn, comment on that TikTok. So many people like Jamie, I remember Jamie would talk about how like so many people had just like commented like on her LinkedIn and then they were like, now they work we work together, you know? So it's such a matter of like figuring out how you're gonna do it and don't be afraid to do it, you know?
I think that's a really good place to end on because I think you gave us enough or even more than enough of motivation to just get out there and start and
I'm
Yeah.
glad.
be confident in yourself as well when you're working and trying to get a job like that. So thank you so much, Lisa, for coming on here and spilling all of your knowledge and your wisdom.
So much fun. I do appreciate you guys.
Now we appreciate your time so much.
Thank you.
And to officially close off, this has been another episode of A Little Jaded.